You must give up hope for a better past. How coaching culture repackages perfectionism as growth, and why relationships pay the price. Leon Garber's article You Must Give Up Hope for a Better Past makes an argument that quietly undermines a large portion of the modern coaching and self-help industry, not by attacking it directly, but by describing a psychological dynamic that coaching culture repeatedly mislabels, rewards, and escalates. Garber is not talking about ambition. He is not talking about high standards. He is not talking about excellence. He is describing perfectionism as a survival strategy rooted in safety, fairness, and the desperate need for emotional coherence. A way of trying to impose order on a world that once felt unpredictable or neglectful. A way of retroactively fixing the past by curating the present. That distinction matters. Because when perfectionism is misunderstood, it does not disappear. It mutates. And in the coaching ecosystem, it mutates into ideology. Perfectionism is not forward-looking. It is retrospective. One of Garber's most important points is that perfectionism is not really about the future. It is about the past. The perfectionist is not chasing more for its own sake. They are chasing certainty. They are trying to answer an unanswerable question. Why did this happen to me? When that question cannot be resolved, the mind looks for compensation. If life was unfair, then life must eventually repay the debt. If love was inconsistent, then love must be earned through correctness. If safety was absent, then control must be total. This is why perfectionism is obsessed with rules, standards, clarity, and moral order. Fairness makes the world feel survivable. Garber makes this explicit. The perfectionist tries to corral past, present, and future into a single, orderly narrative. Anything that threatens coherence feels intolerable. That psychological drive is real. It is also deeply vulnerable to exploitation. Where coaching intervenes, and why it accelerates the problem. Coaching culture does not create perfectionism. It recognizes it, then rebrands it as virtue. Perfectionism becomes high standards, doing the work, living in alignment, raising your bar, no longer settling, becoming your highest self. The underlying engine does not change. What changes is moral permission. Instead of asking the perfectionist to give up hope for a better past, coaching sells them a better future that retroactively justifies everything that came before. The past was not random or unfair. It was preparation. The suffering was not meaningless. It was growth. The dissatisfaction is not ambivalence. It is awakening. This is not healing. It is narrative laundering. Why this often looks like sudden change. From the outside, these shifts are often described as abrupt or shocking. A long relationship ends seemingly overnight. A person who once valued loyalty now speaks with certainty and detachment. Years are reframed as stagnation. Stability is recast as fear. But psychologically, the change is not sudden. What changes is the interpretive frame. For years, perfectionism may have been applied inwardly. Discipline, self-improvement, endurance, loyalty, getting things right. Coaching introduces a new hierarchy where growth outranks relationship, alignment outranks obligation, and self-actualization outranks repair. Once that hierarchy is accepted, reinterpretation happens fast. A decade of shared striving becomes a decade of suppression. Compromise becomes self-betrayal. Commitment becomes conditioning. The past is not remembered. It is rewritten. That is how someone can say, with absolute certainty, this has been coming a long time, even when the relationship itself did not feel that way at the time. Where the only thing that was a long time coming was a desire to manifest a better life for our entire family, but is reframed in coaching. That sentence is not insight. It is post hoc coherence. Love is not enough and other borrowed conclusions. Garber notes that perfectionists struggle with paradox. They want clarity, not contradiction. Ambivalence feels unsafe. Coaching frameworks reward certainty. Doubt is reframed as resistance. Complexity becomes ego. Hesitation becomes fear. So instead of saying, "I don't know what to do," the coached perfectionist reaches for a slogan. Love is not enough. We are not aligned. I can't betray myself anymore. These phrases sound wise because they are decisive. They close the conversation. They remove moral friction. But they are not relational statements. They are ideological ones. In moments of acute vulnerability, these conclusions do not function as truths. They function as exits. When intimacy is decoupled from responsibility. One of the most damaging consequences of this ideological shift is the separation of desire from obligation. In many self-sovereignty and coaching narratives, you are responsible for your feelings. Others are responsible for theirs. Honesty is defined as expressing desire without attachment. Impact is subordinate to intention. Within that worldview, physical intimacy can be framed as neutral. Care becomes optional. Consequences are externalized. Garber describes how perfectionism turns relationships into instruments in a broader attempt to resolve the past. Partners become part of the project, whether they consent to that role or not. When the project changes, the partner becomes expendable. This is not empowerment. It is extraction. The hidden sense of entitlement. Garber touches on something coaching culture avoids naming: the perfectionist's sense of specialness. If suffering was endured, then compensation is owed. If discipline was maintained, then reward is deserved. If others lived more easily, then fairness demands redress. Coaching reframes this entitlement as self-worth. I deserve more. I'm allowed to choose myself. I won't settle anymore. These statements are not inherently wrong, but when they are used to justify harm, rewrite history, or bypass accountability, they stop being assertions of dignity and start functioning as moral shields. Garber's warning is clear. Giving up hope for a better past also means giving up hope of proving you are special because of what you endured. That is a line the coaching industry cannot cross. Its business model depends on the opposite. Why partners and families become collateral damage. Garber notes that perfectionistic parents often place impossible expectations on their children, asking them to redeem the parents' unmet needs. The same dynamic appears in adult relationships. Partners are unconsciously tasked with making life feel fair, making suffering meaningful, validating identity, completing a story. When they fail, not through malice but through being human, disappointment is reframed as misalignment. Coaching language gives that disappointment moral cover. What might once have triggered grief or reflection now triggers action. Leaving becomes courageous. Detachment becomes healthy. Certainty becomes truth. And the people left behind are told, implicitly or explicitly, that they simply did not grow fast enough. Agency still matters. None of this removes responsibility. Garber does not excuse perfectionists. He explains them. Influence is not the same as coercion. Frameworks do not act. People do. Coaching may supply the language, the hierarchy, and the justification. But the decision to apply it to real lives belongs to the person wielding it. Recognizing the psychological mechanism does not absolve harm. It clarifies it. What giving up hope for a better past actually means. Garber's conclusion is quietly radical. Giving up hope for a better past means accepting randomness, letting go of cosmic fairness, decoupling suffering from entitlement, allowing the past to remain unresolved. It means choosing not to turn relationships into repair projects. It does not mean giving up hope for a better future. It means refusing to build that future by sacrificing the present. That stance is incompatible with much of modern coaching culture, which thrives on perpetual dissatisfaction and narrative escalation. Why this matters beyond individual relationships. The problem is not one person, one coach, or one program. The problem is a culture that rewards certainty over care, coherence over compassion, and growth over responsibility. Garber's article exposes a psychological truth that coaching culture repeatedly ignores. Some pain cannot be redeemed by becoming more. Some histories cannot be fixed by reframing them. Some relationships require humility, not hierarchy. When perfectionism is upgraded into ideology, it stops being a personal struggle and starts becoming a moral weapon. And the casualties are rarely the ones holding the frameworks. Leon Garber's argument does not need embellishment. It needs application. When read honestly, it does not validate the coaching promise of endless becoming. It dismantles it. The real work is not optimization. It is renunciation. Renouncing the need for the past to make sense. Renouncing the belief that suffering entitles us to harm others. Renouncing the fantasy that clarity is always truth. Until that happens, perfectionism will keep masquerading as growth, and relationships will keep paying the price.